Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Untold Athlete Podcast. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a couple of things about today's episode. We sit down with a gymnast and our discussion includes a mental skill block. I know this issue can be triggering for some, and I just wanted to give you guys the heads up before we start. We also talk about a few gymnastic skills, so I wanted to let you know a couple of bits of terminology. When we talk about skills, a full is generally regarded as a full twisting somersault. So a full in pike would be a double somersault in the pike position, but with a full twist in the first somersault. Another example would be a full fall, which is also a double somersault, but with a full twist in each rotation. Now, technical jargon out the way, let's get into today's episode. Today we have the privilege of hearing from an athlete whose journey spans from the world of elite tumbling to performing on the global stage with Cirque du Soleil. Her career is filled with extraordinary achievements, including multiple European titles, 6 world medals, and groundbreaking performances with Cirque du Soleil's Alegria. Her story isn't just about pushing physical boundaries, but also about resilience and reinvention. Join us as we dive into her incredible career, the challenges she's faced, and the lessons she's learnt along the way. So please sit back and enjoy The Untold Athlete with Lucie Colebeck. Today, we are joined by an extraordinary athlete who has more than left her mark on the world of tumbling. 3 European titles, 6 World Championship medals, and a 3rd place finish at the World Games in 2017. After an incredible tumbling career, she took her talents to the stage, joining Cirque du Soleil's Alegria. There, she made history, becoming the first woman to perform a triple back somersault in the show since it started all the way back in 1994, and even set a world record for the most consecutive back handsprings on a trampoline in 30 seconds. She's now turned her talents to social media, where she shares her gymnastics content on TikTok and Instagram, so far racking up over 1 billion views and even earning a nomination for TikTok's Sports Creator of the Year. We are absolutely delighted to welcome the remarkable Lucie Colebeck. Lucie, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. We're really excited. How is life as an influencer treating you?
Yeah, very good. That's the first time that someone's called me that, but I'll take it. But no, very good, very different. So just kind of like adapting to new ways, new lifestyle, but it's going really well and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm loving the content and a lot of other people are. I mean, it's going really well. You were recently nominated for TikTok Sports Content Creator of the Year.
Yes, TikTok Sports Creator of the Year for UK and Ireland. So that's, I'm yet to find out. The award ceremony is tomorrow, so fingers crossed.
Yeah,
but
exciting.
To even be nominated is so surreal. We've only really been doing this full time since I came home from Cirque in June.
Yeah.
So in such a short amount of time, it's
just exploded, isn't it?
It literally has.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so cool.
But good to see gymnastics on social media.
Oh, definitely. I think that's the thing as well. When the Olympics is on, I feel like gymnastics kind of just pops, doesn't it? Everyone goes crazy about it. And then as soon as that's done, it's oh, that's it. So for me to be somewhat involved in, inspiring the next generation and keeping gymnastics alive, I think that's what it's all about. Yeah,
it's huge. And I think the world has changed from when we did gymnastics competitive. Yeah. I think the kids that come in gyms now are very different to the kids that were coming in gyms back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. It's such a different world. But also nice to see, because from when we were competing way back when, it's just nice to see it evolve in a different way.
Yeah, it is very different. And like you said, that social media aspect, I think, is going to keep gymnastics alive and current and a sport that people still want to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, for me, that's one of the main goals that we have in the content creating that we're doing at the moment. It is just to inspire the next generation and just to keep it moving, keep it evolving and keep it alive.
Yeah, well, good luck. It's going very well so far.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we competed alongside each other for a few years, so we know each other already, but so the listeners can get to know you a bit better, we're going to do some this or that questions.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
So, morning workout or evening workout?
Morning workout.
Why?
I used to be an evening workout, but recently I switched to morning, and I just feel like when you're starting a day like that, it's already started good, and it can only get better.
Okay, yeah, I like it. Mountain getaway or beach getaway? Are you a hiker?
Do you know what? This sounds awful, but I only hike if there's a good view. There's been multiple times I've hiked hours to a top of a mountain and all I can see is cloud, and I'm so disappointed. So if you're going to guarantee me a nice view, I'll hike for hours.
Okay.
I don't know. That's
take that over a beach.
Oh, yeah. Mountain hike with a good view, I'll take it over a beach.
Mountain hike, no good view, beach.
Yeah.
Okay. Pizza or pasta?
Pizza, 100%.
Yeah?
Yeah, like no brainer.
I thought that would be tricky, you know.
No, don't make me think twice.
The carbs in the pasta.
Oh,
Gimme.
No, for me, it's just the pizza. And then like you have the pizza and then like you leave the crust, but then you use the crust to dip in the sauce.
Yeah, of course.
There's nothing better than that.
Yeah, you know what you're doing. Shoes or slides? Oh. You've got Ugg slippers on right now.
I do, but you know what? I actually was going to give these away to my brother's girlfriend and I found them and I was like, no, I'm keeping them.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I would say slides because they're just iconic and so comfortable, but my trainer collection is phenomenal.
Ooh.
So I'm going to say shoes.
Shoes.
Yeah.
I think we need to see some trainer collection on your Instagram now because that's talking a big game.
I'll put them on there, guys.
Movie or a book?
Oh, that's a tough question. I love movies. Like, I think the older I get and the more I watch movies, I'm not just watching it for the story. Like, I like watching, like, oh, how was that made? And how did that was a good... I think also going into content creating, I'm looking at camera angles and that sort of stuff. But my nan recently did get me into reading books and I do love a thriller. So,
Ooh.
yeah, I'm going to say movies, but maybe in 5 years' time, I'll probably say books.
Quick fire. Favorite movie, favorite book?
Oh, favorite book, Verity. Like, fantastic. If you guys haven't read that, it is up there. And they're making a film and Anne Hathaway's starring, I think. I'm sure that's confirmed.
Are you being paid for that ad?
Well, I'm not, but if you guys are hearing that, then maybe you should. Favorite movie? Do you know what? I actually love, not many people have seen this. It's called The Call and it's got Halle Berry in it. I don't know how old it is. Maybe I don't think it's like too old.
I think it's about 10 years old,
yeah,
something like that.
2013.
Yeah.
Fantastic film. Absolutely fantastic. I don't remember it being in the cinema and I don't think it's on Netflix either. So it might have to be a one through movies kind of job.
I remember it coming out. I haven't seen it, but I do remember it. She's
fantastic.
a dispatch officer.
Yes, yeah. It's brilliant. So good.
Okay, there's some recommendations for you guys there. Ooh, difficult one. Competing or performing?
Oh, gosh. Where I'm at right now, performing. But if you'd have asked me 2015, 2016, competing. But towards the end of my competing, like the last 2 years, I hated it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Yeah, we will. We'll dive deep into that.
So, Lucie, what we want to start off by knowing is what was your journey through sport like? So from very early days of just starting sport all the way up to where you are now.
So I was quite like a late bloomer. Like I feel like some people in our generation would say that, and probably more so now as well. I feel like when I was younger, a lot of kids started at kind of 4 or 5 years old, whereas I started gymnastics I think when I was 8 and then I moved over to tumbling when I was 9, and prior to that my parents got me and my sister into swimming, and I loved swimming. Like I really wanted to kind of like delve into that further, and then pretty much my swimming coach was just like, you're okay, but you're not going to be what you think you're going to be, and suggested to either try diving or gymnastics. I tried diving and I was just like, nah, I don't really like it. And then I tried a recreational class here at Pinewood and literally never looked back. I think I was in a recreational class for like 3-4 months. And then I moved over to team gym, which was great. It was fun. It was social, but I was only really good at the tumbling. And then when I think I was about 8 or 9, I remember this day like clear as anything. I was on trampoline playing around with the girls that I was in a team with, and Vov, my personal coach throughout tumbling, approached me on trampoline, and like he was like the scary Russian guy like in the gym, you know.
Still is.
He still is. Approached me on trampoline, and his words literally were like, hi, I'm Vov. Do you want to come and join tumbling? And if you do, I'll make you the next best thing. And I was like, what's tumbling? So literally I did like a few sessions and I was hooked. Like it was just, I don't know, it was back then when like you see all like the older guys like Sean Gregory, you know, like all the older boys, Charlie Burrows. And yeah, literally never looked back. And I'd had Vov throughout my whole competitive career. And it was just one of those sports where like I came in every day just wanting to learn more, wanting to grow. And it was just so fun. Yeah.
And how soon was it until you actually thought, maybe this will happen?
So I was like clueless. At that point, I was just a kid that loved gymnastics. And I went to my first British in 2007. I was so clueless that I didn't even know. I was like, oh, I'm just going to a competition. That actually, when I later found out, was a trial for the Worlds in Quebec.
And how old are you here?
I would have been 11 to 12, so I think I was 10 at the time, like turning 11 in the year. So I'd only been tumbling for about a year. And I actually stopped at that competition. Like I stopped midway through the track and I was like, oh, like, whatever, it's fine, I'll just go back to training or whatever. But I remember at that British meeting, I met Craig Lowther, I met Matej Todorov, and I remember them talking about me, saying like, oh my gosh, she's so talented, like where did you find her? And like Vov, like not to me, but Vov responding. And it was kind of after that competition where I then found out, oh, people are going to a big competition in Canada, oh my God, what's happening? And that's when I was like, wow, okay, this could be fun and this could be like, I could be good. And then trained for the whole year. And the next British in 2008, I ended up that was my first British title. And that's when I was like, right, okay, Luce, this is something that you could be really good at. And that's kind of when I sort of started to train harder and kind of more serious. But yeah, I mean, literally from then on, it was kind of like just up and up and up.
It's nice that the love was there for it before you ever realised that you were going to go somewhere in the sport. Yeah. It's nice that came first.
Yeah. Like I said, I was kind of a bit naive, a bit oblivious to kind of what I was doing. I was just there because I loved gymnastics and I loved this new sport that I'd never heard of. And yeah, just so happened that I had a natural talent for it and also worked hard.
So I know a bit about tumbling. I've been around tumbling a bit. But for the listeners that don't know what tumbling is, can you give us a quick crash course in what tumbling is? Yeah,
so this was a question that when people ask, I was like, how do I answer that? But I think as a group of tumblers, the perfect explanation that we kind of give, it's like the 100-meter sprint of gymnastics. It's, it's over within 10 seconds and you're literally from the top end of the track to the bottom, you're just going down, doing backflips as powerful as you can. So yeah, that's why we kind of call it the 100-meter sprint of gymnastics.
And it's how many skills?
8 skills.
8 skills. And one of them's normally a round off?
Yeah, round off or Barani, which is kind of you don't really see that anymore. So most of the time it's a round off. And then that turns you into obviously backwards tumbling. And most of the time you're going backwards throughout the whole time. And then the end skill, it can either be rotations, like rotating backwards, or you could be adding twisting rotations into that as well.
Mm-hmm. So 2008, you went and you won the British. And so were you being selected for internationals to represent Great Britain at this point?
So 2008, there was no World Championships. However, I did get selected later on in the year to do, I guess it was sort of like a World Cup in Portugal. And I went there again, kind of thinking, oh, I'm going on holiday and just doing a bit of training in the meantime, and a little competition. And I came away with a gold medal. And that was my first international, first kind of competition where my name is going out there internationally. And yeah, I came home. I remember doing a new routine and came home with a gold medal.
Easy.
Yeah. I mean, no, it definitely was easy. At that time, I think it was under 14s. Mm-hmm. So I remember there was Charlotte Corn, Demi, absolutely fantastic tumblers. And it was just so nice. That was my first time going away with the rest of the GB team. So making new friendships and getting to train with people that we don't train with from other clubs and cities. It was really, really cool.
Bit of an eye-opener as to where this can take you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I remember coming home from that competition and I said to my mum and dad, if that's what the next 10 years of my life can be, if I'm going to do this hobby, then I'm in for a good time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so obviously that was your first taste of international success. Did that just then start to continue all the way through your junior career and into the senior level?
Yeah, definitely. I think 100%. I went into the next year, 2009. I won British again, and then I got selected for my first World Age. And we had an international before the World Age. And I remember it was the first time I put out a full tuck. And it was Vov, my personal coach, was umming and ahhing, do we do it, do we not do it? And we ended up doing it, and it went really well. And then we had World Age in St. Petersburg, I think a month later, and it was my first World Age, and the pressure just got the better of me, and I ended up stopping in the middle of the track.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was just awful.
Did you say full tuck?
In the previous competition,
And
yeah.
how old were you there?
I would have been just turned 13.
Wow, so that's early to be doing that skill.
Yeah, I learnt the skill when I was, I think, 12, and we'd been training it for a year, and then we put it out in that competition. Because I think Vov's plan was to put it out in a competition rather than having the added pressure of putting it at World Age. But yeah, so I stopped in my first run, and then the next run, this is how kind of like clueless I was to competitions, because Vob was like, right, the next run you're doing twist to fall forward, just like put it out there. And I was like, oh, but that was the plan for like if I got into final, like I can still get into final. You know, how naive of me. I just stopped, and I think I did 2 elements. Like there was no way I was making a final. But yeah, the next run I did twist to fall tuck, and I remember at the time, I think it was Vadim, one of the Russian coaches. Like so many coaches, he was the first one, but so many coaches came up to me and like shook my hand. And at that time I was like, oh, like I have no idea what you guys are doing. But everyone was like, that kid has just put out a full fall. Like now looking back at it, I'm like, wow, yeah, I was quite young to be doing that at like a world stage. Yeah,
I didn't know you at that age, and I didn't know you did that young.
Yeah. Twist to full tuck, and like it was probably one of the best routines I've ever done. Like, so yeah, that then was kind of. I mean, I'd messed up at my first British, I messed up at my first world age. So like literally from 2009, I was like, right, I am never doing that again. That was so embarrassing. So yeah, I just came home with like that fire in my belly to never do that again, pretty much.
And nice just to get them out of the way early. First British done, exactly. First world's done, and now I'll just be good forever.
Yeah.
So moving on to sort of your senior gymnastics career, how did that transition go for you?
That transitioning from junior to senior was so smooth. It was always kind of a question like, oh, are you going to go 17 plus or are you going to go senior? But Vov never really he was like, oh no, you're going senior. And I was like, right, okay. So I remember we didn't have a Worlds in 2012, so we kind of had like a year off. My first senior Worlds was 2013. And like that competition was probably one, like, again, team sort of vibe. Like it was the first competition where I was, you know, classed as an adult. And it was just so good. But yeah, the transition for me was quite smooth. I think because I'd learned all my skills as a junior. So when I got to senior, I just kind of had to like perfect them, piece them together in different ways. So for me, when I turned senior, it was more of a case of repetition, rather than having to learn new skills. So yeah, that transition for me was pretty smooth, actually.
And if we look at 2017 as a sort of highlight year at the World Games.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a tumbler, like everyone says, it's like the pinnacle of your sport, right? Because it's like the equivalent to the Olympics for us. And even like being the person to represent Great Britain, like within tumbling, it, like for me, I was like, wow, like I've made it. So like whatever happens here is like a bonus. Training was going really well, almost a bit like too well, but the track was so lovely. And yeah, it was me and Elliot that went, which was kind of weird because I'd been used to going with a big team. And, you know, when you trained with everyone, it was kind of like, at least 8 of you, to then just have me and Elliot on the track. It was quite weird. It almost felt a little bit too relaxed, but then that kind of worked in my favor, like towards the end of the week, because it was literally just like a relaxed vibe. And yeah, I remember qualifying for the final, and that was also quite a weird thing because the qualification and finals on the same day, which going to Worlds and previous Europeans, that was rarely the case.
Sometimes it's 2-3 days apart.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, when am I going to eat? When am I going to cool down? Like, what's going to happen? And I remember it being such a long day. But honestly, I literally remember going into the final, we were warming up in the backtrack, and I was like, I remember saying to Rob, who was the coach that went with us, I was like, I don't know how I have so much energy. Like, I felt so bouncy, like I was so springy. And yeah, I came away with a bronze medal, which behind Fang and Anna, which, I mean, those two on the podium, like, yeah,
they're probably the 2 best ever, I'd say.
Absolute legends, like iconic.
Yeah, incredible result. What were your thoughts sort of coming out of that? Because you've reached, like you said, the pinnacle of your sport. That's the Olympic Games essentially for tumbling. How are you feeling coming off of that then?
So I felt like really, really good, and my kind of mindset was, yes, I got a medal at World Games, and that is fantastic. But I think the ultimate goal was to always be world champion. But with Fang and Anna there, like I felt like that was just, you know, it was just out of reach. But I felt like I was in my prime, so I wanted to give it another go. And at that point, I mean, you know what it's like when you're in competition mode, when you're competition ready, what's another couple of months? And I felt like for me, Worlds was literally just around the corner, because World Games was in end of July, and then we had British in September, and then Worlds in the November. So I was like, okay, I just need to finish out the year, like it's absolutely fine. I had no intention of retiring at this point, but I was like, okay, like I'm you know, I'll let myself have like a week off or so and then just get back into it. And then headed to Worlds at the end of that year, and I came away with I think it was a bronze medal. But that competition, it was extremely strange. And I remember even Charlie Burrows, who used to train at Pinewood, my home gym, now a Cirque du Soleil scout, he even said to me, like, Lucie, like, you don't look like yourself. Like, what, like, as in, he was like, when you're tumbling, he was like, that doesn't look like you. And I felt that. I literally felt like my head was all over the place. Like I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like, and I kind of thought, oh, is this a sign that like maybe I'm kind of ready to retire? Because at that point I was 22, I think, which sounds young. Well, it is young, but at that point you're kind of like, okay, you know, what's next? And yeah, I literally just scraped to get into the final. I qualified in joint 8th. And I got into the final on countback, which like that had never really happened before. I'd always kind of qualified in, you know, top 3, top 4. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? And like the routines I did in prelims were okay. Like they weren't bad. And then got to the final and I literally thought like, okay, we'll just give it your all because you qualified in the final in last. Like you can't get any worse than this, you know? And all I can say is thank gosh that my teammate and best friend Yasmin Tate was there. She was there as a gymnast, but also came on the floor with me pretty much as like my coach. And if she wasn't there, like I definitely wouldn't have got that medal for sure. She knew exactly how I trained. She knew how I competed. She knew like what to say, when to say it. And yeah, came away with a bronze medal, again behind Anna and Fang Fang. And for me, I was like, you know what? Like being on a podium again with them, it's like, I feel like it's such an honor. It's such a privilege. And yeah, I just kind of thought, okay, well, maybe I'm ready to stop tumbling.
And what did you feel was missing or was different? Have you ever been able to put your finger on why you felt that way or why your performance didn't seem to sort of match everything else?
I think, truth be told, at that point in 2015, I'd gone through kind of a real mental block on certain skills. And by that point, in 2017, I'd been doing the same routines pretty much my whole senior career. And I just felt a bit like every competition was beginning to kind of become the same. And it was
stale.
It was almost becoming a bit of like, not a mental toll, but like, I tell you what it was becoming harder. It was becoming more of, not a chore because I love tumbling and I always will, but I was coming to that point where I was worried about competing. Like I hated competing. Whereas, you know, 3-4 years before that, it was fantastic. Like I the pressure, I loved it. Whereas 2017, I remember presenting for the final runs and I was like, I don't want to be here. I literally I couldn't think of anything worse than competing right now. And then I was like, for what? Like, oh, I'm just going to get a bronze medal again because I'm not good enough to come first, you know? But it was becoming a chore. And I did not want that to happen because I love the sport. And then, yeah, coming out of that, it was kind of that vicious circle of, oh, well, Europeans is just around the corner. So if I stay
fit, go on forever.
Yeah, right? It always happens. But thank God I stayed for that Europeans. And just after Worlds, that was actually when I got the call around Christmas time about going to Alegria. So going into Europeans 2018, I'd signed a contract. So I already knew this is my last international. And that's literally the mindset I had. I was like, last international, go out there, put your Great Britain leotard on for one more time and just go have fun. And I think similar to the World Games in 2017, because I had that relaxed mindset, it was the best competition of my career. And I came away with a team gold and an individual gold.
And how different just sort of almost 6 months later from the World Championships you didn't want to be at.
Yeah.
Just that 6 months, but you had something else in sight. It wasn't just monotony.
Yes.
It wasn't just going to Europeans and then going home, waiting to then go to the British and Worlds. You knew that there was something coming after. Yeah,
which it definitely did play a huge part in that. But yeah, it was crazy when I came home from that World Championships. And then obviously I had the good news about Cirque. My mindset just totally changed. And I was like, right, let's go one more time, you know? And I remember being at Europeans and putting my hand up. And I literally remember when the host is like, you know, representing Great Britain, Lucie Colebeck. And as I heard that, tears just came to my eyes. And literally before I was about to tumble, because I was like, wow, I've had 13, 14 years of doing this. And that's the last time I'm ever going to hear that. And it was just like, I've got goosebumps saying it now. It was just as I stood there before my final run, it was a similar situation to the World Championships before. I qualified in, I think, 5th or 6th. And I was like, right, okay, I'm kind of getting to that point where I'm not qualifying in top 3, which is what I was kind of used to throughout my career. And just went out there, had fun and just really, really took it all in and embraced everything.
And became European champion.
Yeah, which was a shock. I literally remember seeing it because Megan Keeley also qualified in the final. And I remember sitting down on the sofa. There was, I think, 4 more people to go. And I was like, right. I did 2 great runs. I've done my job. And I was so content with whatever happened, like, and that's the first time that's ever happened. Like, I'm naturally very competitive, so like Vov had a big part to play in that. He was always kind of like, Lucie, you can medal. So I think I didn't really, like, again, from when he approached me on trampoline, I didn't know I had a talent for this, so I was very kind of naive to it. But I think because I was getting fed that information, I was like, oh, maybe I can do well. And I remember I did my runs and I sat back and I was like, great, like, I've done a really good job. And then I was like, for the first time, I don't mind if I don't medal, because I've come here, I've had a great time with the team, and like, it's my last international. It was, my mindset just completely did a 180. And then I saw the GB flag, there was two next to each other. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it just came up in position number 1 and my jaw dropped. And I literally ran to Vov and was like, what the hell just happened? Like, I don't think my routine, they were good, but in comparison to Megan's routines and Tashina's routines, I was like, wow, I don't know how it's happened, but I'm not complaining. And it was just great. I get, like, hearing the national anthem for one last time, it was just like a real goosebump moment.
Yeah, not a bad farewell, is it?
It definitely wasn't. I cannot complain. Someone up there was looking down on me that day.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay, so finishing the gymnastics career as European champion after having one of your most enjoyable competitions as well. And so you're off.
Yeah.
How was that transition?
I tell you what, that was the longest transition ever. It was great, and it was so smooth, and in terms of skills, super easy. I was going from a rod floor to a power track. Like, for the gymnasts out there that have jumped on a power track, you're going to know that you don't have to do much work on that. I can tell you that for sure. As long as you squeeze tight, you know how to work it. Like, it's heaven. No more sore ankles, no more sore knees. It was bliss. But in terms of performing, oh my gosh. And I know I'm not, like, I wasn't the best performer out there. Like, I know that. But transitioning from competing to performing and having the dance elements and, the skills we were doing in the show were a lot easier. But you're having to maintain that for 10 shows a week, And I would say that it probably took me about a year to get comfortable with being on stage. And that's a lot. That's, that's 360 shows, that's a long time to get comfortable. But after speaking to people that have been in Cirque for a while, they kind of said the same thing. Going from competing to performing is a really hard transition. But yeah, something that it was great, learning and evolving with that. And it was different. My mindset had gone from competing to performing. So it was so nice to learn something new, which constantly kind of gave me something to work towards, which I really enjoyed.
It's quite difficult, isn't it? Because especially coming from a gymnastics discipline, because gymnastics often teaches you there's so much discipline required in gymnastics that you can't really be seen to be having too much of a good time ever when you're competing, when you're training, because then you look like you're not having fun.
Yeah.
So that performance element doesn't exist in that sense that much in gymnastics. Yeah,
the only comparison that I kind of told myself was towards the end of competing, I relied on the audience, their cheering, their involvement with the competition. That's the only kind of similarity that I can put to performing, because when we had a great audience, I thrived off of that. Like, my performing was so much better. But on the audiences that were, maybe less vocal, I found that really hard. But you're so right. I'd gone from basically being a robot my whole life, very like structure to learning how to have fun on stage. And it was so strange, especially me not being like a natural dancer, like I don't move naturally.
Oh, I saw you at a few banquets.
well. Just get me a few gins in me, I'll be all right. I couldn't do that at Cirque though. They wouldn't let me. But yeah, like having to learn the choreo and move in that way. It was great fun learning and we had some laughs, but it was also very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, big change actually to think about. Obviously the tumbling stays the same, if anything, maybe a little bit easier because the track, but everything else very different. Yeah,
extremely. And also, the tumbling, it was interesting because we then had a lot of like synchronized acrobatics, which as a tumbler, you're not used to that, So having to do skills, but in time with someone else, sometimes you're doing a synchronized element with 3 other people. So even learning how to do that was something that we never did, so it was a bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, big one. And so in Alegria for how long was it?
I left here in 2018, but then take off a year and a half for COVID.
Of course, yeah. And then back this year.
Yes.
And now TikTok and Instagram all day, every day.
Yeah, now just content creating, seeing how that goes. Yeah.
And going really well.
It's going really well, yeah. My brother is the brains behind all of that, and he actually started my TikTok about 4 or 5 years ago, and just posted a video of my tumbling competitions, and one day it just like went viral. And then he was like, I mean, he loves that sort of stuff, like editing videos, and did that. And when I was in Cirque, it was the kind of thing where, you know, I'd send him training videos, and every time I came home, we'd go in the gym, get a couple of videos. But we've gone full time since I retired from Cirque earlier this year in summer, and it's going really well. And it's, yeah.
And in fairness, he can move as well.
He can move.
I've seen him somersault.
Yeah, he's a very talented man. Which
too talented.
Yeah.
I think it runs in the family, to be honest.
Oh, no, honestly, I tell you what, give him any sport, he will absolutely smash it. Me, I'm just a tumbler.
So he's the Colebeck we should be watching.
Yeah, he's the one you should be talking to. But no, he's absolutely fantastic, and yeah, it's going really well. And also so lovely to be able to share this experience together. I mean, me and my siblings are all really close anyway, but being on tour for so long, it definitely took a toll on me. So to be able to come home and work together, it's so fun.
So, Lucie, we know a lot more about you now and about where you've come from in your career in gymnastics and in Cirque. What we'd like to know is, during your gymnastics career, what was the biggest challenge that you faced?
So this is like a really easy answer. And I was very fortunate enough to not have any physical injury throughout my whole career. Touch wood, you know.
Yeah, very fortunate.
Yeah, extremely fortunate. However, in 2015, this mental block came out of nowhere. Started on a fall, ended up, I couldn't even do a whip run, couldn't even standing tap back. It was, that for me, that whole year, and even to this day, that mental toll that it took has changed my life completely.
Mm-hmm. So with regards to the sort of mental blocks, obviously in gymnastics, that's a very, very common thing. But to people that are listening that don't know that sort of terminology and that sort of dynamic, can you sort of let us know what that feels like? How does that manifest itself?
Yeah, the only way I can sort of explain it is literally your body wants to do a certain skill, but your mind just isn't letting you. That's the only way I can kind of explain that, you know. It started off with a fall, and I remember the day it started so vividly. It was a Saturday. I was training at Pinewood, my home gym, and myself and Christoph Willerton were training on trampoline. We were just playing. We were playing a game of Stick It on trampoline, and I'd done all the skills, and it was my turn to do full tuck. And I go tuck back, kick out, and I go for a full tuck, and it's like my head goes back, but my body doesn't. And I remember like standing back up, and I was like, "Ooh, like that was weird." I kind of just like shook it off, and I was like, "Christoph, let me have one more go. Come on, like I got to win the game." And anyway, I went for it again, and the same thing happened. And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, sorry, Christoph, you won. Like I'll come in Monday, you know." And I didn't think about it the whole weekend. I just thought, "Oh, like a bit strange. I've had a hard session. Like maybe I'm just a bit tired." Anyway, I come in on Monday, and the same thing happens. And then I'm like, right, this is a bit strange, probably not good, kind of what's happening. And literally Tuesday, same thing happened, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then from then on, I was like, right, this is a bit of an issue now because we've got competitions to prepare for. This is a skill I've been doing since I was 12. Like, what is happening? And yeah, kind of, I spent weeks, months fighting myself. At this point, I didn't really know. I never used the word mental block, never, at this point. And I was kind of like, oh, like maybe it's just, maybe I've overdone it, you know, maybe I've done a few too many full falls. And yeah, kind of from then on, I tried so many things to fix it. I ended up training in a different gym for a period of time, came up with so many session plans, you know, went to a psychologist, I even went to a hypnotherapist. None of it worked. And at this point it was getting bad. It started off with a full fall, and then it became back in full in. So like all the twisting elements I just couldn't do. Like my mind just wasn't letting me twist. And it was so weird because all these twisting skills, they were so easy for me, and I just couldn't comprehend or understand what was going on. And it even got to the point where I was scared to then do a double straight, a whip run, you know, like even like standing elements. Like it was getting to the point where I was just questioning everything. And I actually think I was speaking to Tracy at one point, trampolining coach, and she said, like, stop looking for answers. And I was like, what do you mean? I need an answer. I need an answer to fix this. And she was like, no, stop looking for an answer. She was like, and I think it was her that kind of said, like, you know, you've never really had a physical injury. Just see this as your challenge. Like, in a career, everyone has challenges that they need to kind of, they either get through or they don't. See this as your challenge. And from then onwards, my mindset sort of changed. And I made the decision to not train full. I was like, I'm not going to train it, because at that point in my career, I didn't need it. I ended up training at Lilleshall with Craig Lowther, literally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, came home to Pinewood, trained at my home gym on Friday and Saturday. So I tried to take myself out of the environment that it first started, which did work. You know, it was the kind of thing where one program would work for a couple of weeks. Oh, nope, scrap that, change programs. I went to numerous different coaches and nothing was really working until I took out, okay, I think having the pressure of I need to do full was getting a bit too much. So I took that out of the equation, and I only then trained full in pike and rarely back in full. I was most comfortable with twisting in the first somersault. But on a day-to-day basis, it changed. Some days I could do a full in, some days I could do a back in full. It was so odd. And I think it was so frustrating because I had no one else to blame but myself. But then I felt like I couldn't even blame myself because I didn't know what was going on. Yeah. And it was a constant battle on my mind, to the point where I took time off. I was like, right, maybe this is it. Maybe I just retire now.
And that happens to so many people in that scenario.
It really does. And I'm so glad that I pushed through, because it was weird that love for the sport, I felt like was slowly dying because this mental toll it was taking. But I'm so glad that I had that fight in me to keep pushing through. And I think that's what made the last few years of my competitive career frustrating, because it was a constant battle of my body and my mind, and that was really draining. So yeah, I took full out the equation. I feel like I perfected my full in pike. I even got it so good that I was able to like kick out of the pike. And then I went to Worlds that year in 2015, and I remember saying to Craig at the time, I was like, look, I'm only coming for the team. Like, I'm not even thinking about individual final. Like, I'll be there for the team, do a nice like double straight to full in pike or double straight to double pike. And I ended up making the individual final, which for once I was like, oh gosh, like I don't really want to be here. And I remember Christoph was standing behind the barrier and I was in the final. My first run hadn't gone amazing, but I did double straight to full in pike. And Christoph, you know what he's like when he's competing. He's there with a notepad and pen and doing the calculations. He's absolutely great. And I remember looking back at him and I was like, Christoph, like, what do I do? And he was like, okay, Lucie, if you double pike, like, you probably won't medal, but if you full in straight, you might be able to medal. And I was like, I'm not a full in straight girly. Like, that's not me. And I literally remember saying, like, I don't want to double pike because if I'm here, like, I want to be able to get on the podium. And I don't remember the last time I did full in straight, so that's not going to happen. And I literally said to myself before I put my hand up, I was like, right, because the previous run, the transition hadn't come out that good. I said to myself, right, if the transition comes out good, I'm just putting a full fall on the end of it. And I'd been training full falls into a foam pit, but I hadn't done it on track in about, we're in November, so about 9 months. But the muscle memory was there, and that's what I relied on. I was like, Luce, like, it's your body, your control. You know what to do. And it's probably one of my favorite videos to watch, because as I take off for the full fall, I'm twisting, and Craig is at the bottom of the track, and you can see his jaw drop when he sees I go for the second full, and like, I land it. It's like one of the most perfect full falls I've ever done. Like, I've never had a mental block. Landed it and got a silver medal. Yeah. And it was honestly like one of the best competitions of my life. It was crazy because everyone on the team, there were whispers like, oh yeah, Lucie's having some full fall issues. So we knew you weren't going to do that. Yeah, if we knew anything on that run, we knew you weren't going to do full fall. Yeah. And then when it just popped out, there was a lot of jaws that dropped. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, mine included. I think I landed and just cried straight away, and I was in so much disbelief. And yeah, I remember getting off the competition floor and calling Vov, and I just said to him, like, because it was really hard. Vov also, I don't think he had dealt with many people that had gone through a mental block. You know, he's a Russian coach, and very much like, you come in, you do your job. And it was frustrating for me, but it was just as frustrating for him as well, because he couldn't fix it. And he's a perfectionist, so for him not to be able to fix something, I mean, for anyone not to be able to fix something, it is really frustrating. So yeah, when I was doing a lot of training at Lidl without him, I think it was hard. But at the time, that's what I needed. I needed to get myself out of the environment that it started. And yeah, I remember calling him and I just said to him, like, I don't know how that happened, but like, it did. And, you know, I wish you were here and stuff like that. And it was, for me, I always said it, that silver medal beats any gold medal that I ever got.
I think the biggest example of this in the sort of public eye would be Simone Biles at Tokyo.
With the twisties,
yeah.
Yes. Which, you know what, when that kind of all came out, I wasn't happy, because like, having a mental block and having the twisties, as other people know, it is horrific. But I was so pleased that she brought it to the public eye, because it is a problem and it's so frustrating. And, you know, I remember reading some of the comments about it, you know, people being really nasty. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, when you're in your own mind, it's awful, and you don't need other people's comments about it. So yeah, I was so, like, I don't know Simone, but I was watching it, I was so proud. And I just thought, like, the admiration I have for her, and for anyone for that matter, but like, to remove herself out of the Olympics, you know, like, she wouldn't have wanted to do that.
No.
Like, who wants to do that? So yeah, I had so much admiration for her at that point, and I think she really kind of changed the game of gymnastics at that point, because you don't hear of it, but a lot of people do have mental blocks.
Yeah.
And like you said, it ruins a lot of people's careers, because it is so tough. So yeah, when that happened in Tokyo, I just thought this needed to happen. Someone that big, I think if anyone was to do that, she's the best person that could have done that.
I think obviously gymnastics, everyone knows that it's an incredibly physically demanding sport. That's no secret at all. I think gymnasts everywhere, when Simone had that issue so publicly, like you said, it was almost like she was our poster girl for it, for how difficult this issue really is. And this issue for gymnasts, if you were a gymnast anywhere near the top level, I mean, 9 times out of 10, you've had some skill confusion. You've got lost in some skills, and you've had to battle through some of it. And it's so difficult to describe to anyone who's never done gymnastics at that level. Yeah,
100%. I felt like, another way of putting it, I felt like when she had that problem, it almost gave other people and other gymnasts like, oh, it's okay to have a mental block. It's okay to struggle. Like, you know, if Simone Biles, like the GOAT of gymnastics, is struggling, it's okay. And I wish that almost something like that happened when I was going through it, because I felt like I was so alone. And I really wasn't. You know, I had family, friends, so many coaches that were there supporting me. But when you're in your own head, like, there's no worse place to be, is there, than in your own head. So yeah, I wish there was something like that when I was around.
An example that you could look at and say, okay, this is normal.
It's okay, yeah, it's normal. But yeah, like I said, I always said this, as bad as it sounds, I'd take a physical injury over a mental one, because this mental block went with me to Cirque. It changed my life, you know. It's my mental kind of way of living now is so different, I think, because of the mental block.
Yeah, because it affects you forever then, because you will always have had that issue.
Yeah.
And before you had that issue, you'd never had it.
Exactly, yeah.
I think it's so hard to describe, because unless you've been there, it's so difficult to get anyone to visualize it. But as an analogy, it's like jumping out of an aeroplane and not knowing whether or not your parachute will open.
That is literally a perfect way of explaining it. And yeah.
And the only way to find out is to go and do this incredibly dangerous skill you're just about to do, and hope that your body just complies.
Yeah, that is, wow, it's a great analogy. I mean, it's a scary one, but
it's what it feels like, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's so many times where a lot of the time I've made myself train into pit for that reason. I was like, because if I open out and if I get lost, I don't want to be landing on a hard set of mats. So yeah, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's absolutely awful, but in a way it has changed me for the better, because now I'm more aware of it. And yeah, I think as bad as it was, I'm glad that I had a challenge, and I'm glad that I overcame it.
So yeah, really tough time for you, going through that sort of skill confusion, that mental block. If you could go back to that time, so you've had that pit session where you started to have some problems, a couple of weeks have gone by, those problems are still going on. Obviously from here, you're now going to try and address these. You mentioned about training in different places with different coaches, just changing lots up. If you could go back to that time, is there anything that you would have done differently?
That's a great question. I think in terms of like trying to navigate your way through a mental block or skill confusion, twisties, whatever you want to call it, there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong way of navigating your way through it. But I think if I were to go back in time, and when I think about that year that I had, the one thing that I wish I did more of, actually I didn't do any of it. So the one thing that I wish that I changed was just to be kinder to myself, because I think now I'm a bit older and I guess I've come out on the other end of it. There were so many days where I just wasn't kind to myself and I was blaming myself, and I think that probably made it 10 times harder than what it actually was. So yeah, I think in terms of the programs we did and where I trained and, you know, the training sessions that we could have had to adapt to, I think that was all a way of me just trying to figure out. But I think I spent way too long trying to find an answer for why is this happening, rather than, okay, how can we fix it or how can we find a new path? And like I said, it wasn't until I had that conversation with Tracy that she kind of said, like, right, okay, well, if this road isn't working, you need to start paving your own pavement. And yeah, I spent months looking for an answer. You know, I even was like, have I had a growth spurt? Like, has my center of mass changed? Like, I spent months trying to find reasons why this is happening, rather than trying to find new ways to now train and now compete and find that skill back. And that is the biggest advice that I give to kids or people that are going through mental challenges. I'm always like, it's really frustrating, but you need to be kind to yourself, because if you're not and you're kind of constantly beating yourself up, then you're making yourself feel bad on top of the situation that you're going through, you know?
Adding that stress on top.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also, because it was so stressful, it then went into different avenues of my life. You know, it was affecting work, it was affecting family, it was affecting relationships. And I think that's because of how much pressure I was putting onto myself and how unkind I was being to myself. Yeah, it was a real tough time. And to make that time as less stressful as possible, just be kind to yourself if you're going through something like that.
Yeah, it's so difficult as well, because we always judge ourselves on how well we're doing in sport. How well am I doing? How well am I training? And obviously when something like that happens to you, your training dips and can dip quite a lot. But it's not a question of effort. It's not a question of are you trying or not? And so it's so difficult, because your whole reward system is built around, am I doing well or am I not doing well? And so something like that happens, you're all of a sudden not doing well. Well, then I must not be doing the right things or trying hard enough. Yeah.
And that's absolutely spot on. And like I said before, some days I would go in, I'd do all these twisting skills, fantastic. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting somewhere. The next day I come in and I can't do anything. And it's so frustrating, because like you said, I'm still putting in the same amount of effort, if not more, but just today is not a good day. And I think that's also another thing. I would allow myself, if it wasn't happening, I wouldn't force myself to stay there for 3 hours. I would just go home if I were to go through that now. Whereas, you know, back then, oh no, I had 3 more hours of training, so I was here on trampoline until I do it, you know, and it wouldn't happen, and it would make me feel worse, which then it was like a kind of a bit of a ricochet effect, because then the next day I would go in and think, oh, well, I spent 3 hours yesterday not doing it, so today's probably going to go the same. And it was just a really vicious circle. So yeah, the older I am and the more knowledge I have on it now, if it's not happening one day, I would, okay, go home. There's always tomorrow.
And can I ask, obviously you're going through a tough time, but just generally at this time, with regards to your identity as a person, because we know that this is something that athletes have an issue with a lot of the time, would you say that your identity back then was Lucie Colebeck, tumbler?
100%. And I was talking to someone about this when I was leaving Cirque, which this summer, and even now I'm kind of struggling with, because yeah, I was Lucie Colebeck, GB tumbler. And then when I went to Cirque, it was Lucie Colebeck, Cirque du Soleil artist. And now I'm home, I'm now navigating and trying to find what's the next thing? Is it Lucie Colebeck, TikToker, you know, or YouTuber? Like, that's kind of avenue I want to go down. But yeah, when I was going through the mental block, it was that thing of, oh, well, if I'm not doing well and I'm not getting medals, then am I still Lucie Colebeck, the tumbler? Like, I honestly felt like as the mental block was getting worse, my identity was literally slipping through my fingers, which I think was also then more frustrating and more pressure because I wasn't ready to retire at that point. I knew I had a good few years left in me, but it was literally just, it was just like,
felt like it was being taken away.
Yeah, it was just vanishing. It was like disappearing. And I was trying to constantly chasing a dangling carrot in front of you. I was constantly trying to get it and I just couldn't, which was a really interesting thing to kind of go through. And if anyone kind of has been through a similar thing of feeling like you're losing your identity, it's absolutely awful.
And just makes that issue that you're having that's come out of nowhere and you don't know why, just makes it so much worse.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Lucie, what we're looking for now is, to any athletes that are listening that are trying to navigate their own career, either in gymnastics or in another sport, what advice would you give to those listening?
That's a really, really tough question. One I get asked quite a lot, actually. And I always find myself saying a very similar thing. I think it sounds so cliche, but you just have to go into every training session remembering why you started. Like for me, I the first day I joined tumbling, I fell in love with it instantly. And every hard session that I had, I always took myself back to little Lucie and why I started, what made me fall in love with the sport, which I think really helped because it took me back to a time that I did remember why I was here and why I wanted to do well, why I wanted to be here, which then made me feel a little bit more relaxed. So I think if I was to give any advice to gymnasts or, other sports people, it would just be to remember exactly why you started and what you want from it. I think sometimes it's really hard when you're kind of going through a phase of, doing really well in your sport. It is hard to forget that. I did go through a phase of, okay, I need to get medals, I need to do well, which I found it was almost kind of like it was becoming more of a job rather than the hobby I started because I loved it, So yeah, for me throughout my career, I did have to kind of constantly remind myself why I was tumbling and like why I started it initially. Because I think going back to my last European Championships in 2018, the more fun you have with it, you tend to find that you do better. And that's what I wish I did a little bit sooner, is just have fun with everything and just, because at the end of the day, like it is just a hobby. It's a hobby that you started it for a reason. You didn't start it because, I don't know. Hang on a minute.
Oh, take your time.
Like, you don't start it with the intention of it being a job. It does become a bit like that, but you start it for a reason. I remember the first time I saw a tumbler on the track, and I just fell in love with it as soon as I jumped on a track myself. So yeah, I think as long as you're having fun with it, then, it's only going to go up from there.
And a lot of athletes give that sort of advice with regards to enjoy what you're doing because you're doing it every day. But we've also talked about how difficult it is to do that.
Yeah, it is extremely difficult. And I think now that I've retired from competing and also retired from performing, it is that thing that I am constantly trying to tell people, I'm trying to remind people to think that, because I now no longer do it. And even though I'm doing a bit of content creating, it is slightly different, I'm doing the content creating because I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. But also, I think when you're in that kind of rhythm of competing or performing, you do forget. You do just get into a bit of a rut, don't you? But now that I no longer do neither of those, it's that thing of when you don't have it, you realise what you don't have, So I think for me, it was always just don't take it for granted, which is a lot easier said than done.
But it sounds like you were pretty good at it, because I'd say athletes in general aren't good at that.
Yeah, I think, if I'm honest, like I know I said about my mental block, I was trying not to find a reason, but that's the kind of reason that I gave myself why I lost it. I feel like I almost took the full fall a bit for granted because I learnt it from such a young age, and it was my favourite skill to do. You know, I could do it with my eyes closed. It was so good. And that's kind of, at the older I got, I kind of thought, oh, maybe I took it a bit for granted, you know, because it was always something that I could do so easily. And that's the thing as well. You know, when I was training and competing into performing, I knew that, I think because the mental block almost broke me, I nearly lost what I loved. I think the competitions after that, because I knew that, wow, this could be over, like, you know, with a click of the fingers, it made me appreciate the little things. So yeah, the mental block was awful, but I'm also so glad that I did go through it.
Yeah, changed your perspective for the end of your career and made you more grateful for the things that were coming. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. Like, definitely. And I think it is really hard to do that, especially when you train from such a young age. You know, you are kind of, it is a little bit robotic. You come in, you train, you do what your coach says, then you go home. But yeah, my advice to young gymnasts, young tumblers or young sports people is just, you're talented, you work hard, but be kind to yourself and just be grateful for what you do.
Okay, so it's time for my selfish question, which is where I get to just ask you anything I want. Okay. So my question is, what is the most unusual or maybe unexpected skill that you've picked up from your sporting / performing career?
Gosh. Do you know what? No, it's such a boring answer, but when I was at Cirque, I made it my mission to learn how to juggle. And I did.
How
I was
well?
Like, you know what? I got to a phase where I could juggle with knives. No, I'm kidding. I wish I could. I could juggle with 3 balls and I could do like some fancy tricks. I don't know what the names were, but I could do some fancy. It wasn't just like normal juggling. I could do like some fancy tricks with it.
Have you still got your fancy tricks?
Give me a couple of days to get training again.
Well, that sounds like some content to me.
Yeah. Next video, you'll see me juggling. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really say it's unusual, but like I learned aerial straps when I was there, which was really cool. My kind of like main goal was to leave Cirque not being just a tumbler. I learned how to juggle. I learned how to hold a handstand, which surprisingly as a tumbler or, you know, gymnast, I never got taught how to hold a handstand.
Really?
Yeah, so it was actually the Danish boys that taught me how to handstand. I could hold a minute.
It's so interesting because we had Sammy Rocket on and she was similar with regards to like she couldn't muscle up. I don't know how good her handstand work was good because she was acro, wasn't she?
Yeah.
But she couldn't do things like muscle up on a bar.
No, I can't either.
See, I came from artistic before trampoline and I just assume everyone that is good at gymnastics, any discipline of gymnastics, can just do sort of everything.
I mean, like if you give me an artistic bar where there's a bit of like bounce to it, yeah. But I tried CrossFit a couple of months ago and I used to look at them and be like, oh, muscle up. Why are they swinging so much? Yeah. And I could not do it, even with that big swing. I was so embarrassed. Well, I was humbled.
Good. It's nice to know that you're not just immediately good at everything.
Yeah. CrossFit, I'd tell you what, I didn't sign up to that gym because I was like, nope, definitely not. Too hard for me.
Lucie, thank you so much for sitting down with us, for sharing your story and your advice. An incredible career that is still now going in a different direction, but still very much going. It's been great to catch up. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My first ever podcast. Yeah, it's been a great experience and thanks for letting me share my story.
Well, you've been great. Thanks, Lucie. And that wraps up another episode of the Untold Athlete Podcast. It's been an eye-opening conversation with Lucie, offering us a glimpse into the life of a world-class gymnast. From the highs of elite performance to mental challenges like skill confusion and the frustration that can bring. A huge thank you to Lucie for sharing her journey with us, and I hope it's given you guys some valuable perspective. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share the Untold Athlete Podcast with anyone who'd enjoy these stories. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.